Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Control Engineering webcast, Unlocking the Power of Reality Capture with Asset-Based Technologies, sponsored by Prevu3D. I'm your moderator, Gary Cohen. Very happy to join you today on behalf of Control Engineering. Before we get too far into this, here are a few tips and tricks to help you get the most from today's webcast. If you're experiencing any issues with your slides or audio, simply refresh your browser. You can control the volume of this webcast by adjusting the volume on your own computer or by adjusting the volume on the webcast platform. If you're having any technical problems with the audio or with the slide presentation, just click on the information icon in the dock for troubleshooting steps. But if you do need a technician, please type a message in the Q&A widget on the right side of the webcast console, and the tech team will get to you as quickly as possible. Type any questions for our speaker in the Q&A widget on the right side of the webcast console. The live Q&A session will start in about 45 minutes. Today's webcast is being recorded, and you'll receive an email with a link to the on-demand event. Finally, to download a certificate of completion and a PDF copy of the presentation, use the additional resources widget that's on the right side of your webcast controls. Those documents will also be available with the on-demand version of this webcast. You can also expand your view of the slides by using the icon in the top right corner of the slide widget. All right, now we get to the good stuff where I get to introduce our presenters. We have today Michel Besner, Philippe Bédard, and Nick Hughes. Michel brings over 20 years of experience developing and marketing innovative solutions across various industries, including digital twins, business intelligence, social media, news analytics, television, films, and video games. With expertise in strategic planning, product management, and business development, Michel has held leadership positions at major software companies and successful startups, contributing to over 8 acquisitions and multiple multi-million-dollar funding rounds. Phil has a background in industrial electronics technologies and automated production engineering. Over the past 4 years, he's evolved from R&D software development to customer success and currently holds the position of product manager at Prevu3D. His contributions to the growth and success of the products are integral. Nick has been a driven team leader, passionate about industrial information and operational excellence at Amsted Rail for over 8 years. In his role, he spearheads the integration of new technologies to enhance business process and operations. With a track record of leveraging cutting-edge technology to drive growth and profitability, Nick excels in tackling technical challenges to solve complex business problems. All right, gentlemen, with that, I'm going to hand things over to you.
Thank you, Gary. So the usual slide that we might talk about a few things that are futures, and of course we can't guarantee that things will be delivered exactly as we were going to talk about it. Of course, we're trying to do that as much as we can, but usual legal little thing in the beginning. So really happy to be here today. Of course, we have a dedicated Q&A session at the end, but feel free to ask questions throughout the presentation. We like to make things interactive, and we want to make sure that you understand what we're doing at Prevu3D, and we have a great customer with Amsted Rail today with Nick, and so we want to make sure that you understand everything we're doing, and so any questions is a good question. I will be more than happy to answer them, some of them even during the presentation or at the end of the dedicated Q&A session. So I want to start talking about this notion of the single version of the truth, right? And so obviously it's a very high level concept, but you need to, as an engineer or designer or anybody into a company, whether you're in manufacturing or other industries, you need to make sure that you're dealing with the truth. And like obviously if you're making business decision or engineering decisions on the wrong CAD model and so on, well, that can be a dangerous compromise in having the wrong information, right? And it's really about, well, there's data in a lot of places, right? So there's CAD BIM data, there's operational data that's handled by operational managers. You've got, different departments from, safety teams handling like health and safety procedures and asset inspections and other things. And so there's a lot of information out there. And so the challenge is, of course, is, the simplest way would be like, well, let's bring everything together in one place. Well, that would be quite a challenge for most companies. And so it's really about where can we connect this data into a single environment? And really what we've been focusing at Prevu3D is really about this notion of providing visual context to information. And we'll have a quick element in a few seconds that Philippe is going to show you, but we have a product that takes 3D scanning data and make the most visual environment possible to understand your space. And whether it's for engineering purposes all the way to maintenance and operations, this creates a very compelling environment to basically create a digital replica or a digital twin, as we often call it. And I don't know if, Gary, can you switch this screen to the screen of Philippe, if possible, for the main screen?
Emily should be able to handle that for you. Emily, can you flip that over for us? Perfect.
Yeah, it looks like that's active.
Okay, great. Sorry, so from my screen, it doesn't seem like so perfect. Thank you for confirming that. And so, as you can see here, this is a unretouched 3D environment. We basically took a 3D scan, point cloud, as you might know it, which are typically very heavy, very cumbersome, and we create this extremely visual environment, right? So automatically into our cloud platform, we're able to convert this point cloud into a 3D environment that's extremely interactive, visual, and we'll talk throughout this presentation how we're enabling your various elements of your engineering workflow with this technology, this product that we've built. And of course, Nick is here to tell his own side of the story because he's one of our customers. For the past couple of years, we've been working with Amsted Rail and other of their companies in their portfolio on how to digitize space and enabling this to be a visual context for different departments. And the company has been focusing initially on engineering tools, and we'll talk about that in a few slides, but now we're expanding a lot more towards these operational digital twins for maintenance and operations, which is not as much at the core of our discussion today per se, but of course, if you have colleagues in your companies that are open or interested in the notion of an operational digital twin, we can certainly do a follow-up on that with you if you want to reach out to us after this. And really today is really about the engineering side of the equation, which is extremely important because most of you have to deal with your responsibility as an engineer is to make sure that if you're doing design plans, you're changing a layout of a facility, that you want to make sure that what you're doing is based on reality and as exact on the first single version of the truth.
Yeah,
and so here, as you can see here,
Michel, I was going to jump in. So it's really important to note. So from a manufacturer standpoint, the first time I saw Prevu, it looked a little bit like movie magic, and that was kind of my gut feel because a lot of the times it's too good to be true. It is. But internally, we've been able to produce digital twins of spaces, large and small, that look exactly like what you see here. And the screen share is a little is choppy anytime you try to share it. We have the same thing. It's just a really big application. It's like sharing CAD. But regardless of the scanner, those things that we're seeing today, the live share, those are absolutely achievable even by us as a manufacturer.
Exactly. Great point, Nick. And indeed, it's usually when we present our product in a live demo, people have a first sense of disbelief because it looks too good to be true to some extent. Our secret is really that how we've been using different stack of technology, from gaming technology, artificial intelligence, and other concepts that allows us to build this extremely high performance visual experience. And it changes the whole understanding of the space. And so very much like when you have when you're buying a house, you have something similar for visiting your house that you want to buy. We're doing this from the industrial manufacturing side of the equation. And really it's all, of course, house has some degrees of complexity, but when you're dealing with a complex manufacturing site, there's a lot of equipment, there's a lot of stuff in there. And really our focus is to create these digital replicas using different types of 3D scanning technology. So we don't provide the scanning ourselves. Like in the case of Amsted, they bought their own scanner because they have so many facilities that they're looking to scan. But there are obviously 3D scanning providers that exist that can take in the scanning process and then ingest this information into our system. And very, very, very quickly, in a few days, a couple of weeks at that most, you are getting this type of visual environment for your space. And it's really the best copy of your space because it's a scan, it's a digital replica. And then what's interesting for us is that we're able to take this and do different things. And so here, I think Philippe is going to show how we're able to, for example, remove a piece of equipment. So let's say you want to change your configuration of your production line. How can you use this to remove some equipment and create in minutes instead of hours or days a complete new design layout of your space and really use that as a collaborative environment to share with your colleagues and other stakeholders. And it becomes a truly visual experience and giving context to anybody that needs to understand what the kind of work you're doing. And I think, Nick, that's something that you've used extensively, even for planning moving equipment between multiple facilities, correct?
Yeah. So engineering is a very attractive and relatively easy to share use case for manufacturing. The two dramatic value adds. The first is putting in place controls or control panels. If you don't know who Amsted is, we have 4 core foundries that create railroad components. So our facilities are hot, they're tight, and we pour steel. So space has to be kind of carefully navigated. When we build something, it's easy if we build the same thing and we put it in place 4 times. And it's a little bit more difficult if we have to build a bespoke solution. So when you can create in Creo, SolidWorks, or Autodesk a CAD solution, because that doesn't go away here, import it into a twin and put it in the actual space and see if it fits and the scale is accurate, engineering really has some light bulbs go off at that point. But here we're talking about maybe a little bit of a smaller scale. So for something as big as new business acquisitions, if you want to move large capital assets like a furnace, for instance, to take that from one state to another state or a country to another country and copy and paste it and see if it'll fit, that's a pretty unique capability that engineering companies really like.
Absolutely. And so that's definitely something that we're really happy about. And really, when you think about it, what we're creating here is actually a solution that wants to leverage 3D scanning, or what we call reality capture, across the whole workflow and the process, from engineering all the way to maintenance and operations. And so that's something we'll have a few more information later. I know that there's a question from Howard that I'll answer immediately. It's like, can you connect operational data? And that's one of the things that's coming very soon in our product, enabling someone to connect operational data, IoT data, and other information directly into this digital twin is definitely something that we are coming out very soon. Actually, we are doing some initial work and tests with Amsted Rail to be precise, and very soon that will be available for all of our customers in connecting not only the engineering world, but also enabling the use of our digital twin for maintenance and operational purposes. So let's go back to our slide deck on the next slide. So as we've seen briefly here, and we'll have more visual as we go through the whole, interchange, it's all about taking reality capture and connecting it all to engineering, manufacturing, operational processes. So giving context with reality to your different functions, right? And so I'll go just a bit more technical of some of the products that we have, because it's important to understand, and that will go back to the question that Howard had on how we're connecting information. And so I will switch to the next slide. And our main interface is this web application called Reality Platform. And that's really where we're hosting your 3D scanning data, and you're defining your projects and your sites and everything. And with Reality Platform, what's really key is that we're building this complex environment to make it simpler for you to handle not only the complexity of taking scanning data, and 3D scanning data, if you've done it before, can be very heavy. There's a lot of point clouds, can be hundreds and terabytes of data. And as you saw, we create what we call these reality meshes that are optimized mesh environment compared to the actual point cloud. And just like Philippe was showing a bit earlier, we're able to integrate CAD and BIM information into here. And so again, enabling more integrations. And really what we're looking into, and that probably will be a good opportunity also with Philippe to show this notion of what we call reality asset, right? Because if you look at a scan, it's basically a blob of information. Our eyes see things, but the computer just thinks it's a blob of triangles or points in space. And really the strength of what we build with this notion of a reality asset is how to break down your scan into logical components, your different piece of equipment, your tank, your pumps, and everything else, your piping, and structure that into logical elements. And a lot of the presentation you'll see next is really about how do we take these assets and both on one side enable engineering workflows, and we'll show you some elements around how what we're doing, for example, with Autodesk Revit, but also how we're able to connect very soon to these operational systems, like your ERP, your operational data systems like Aviva Pi or IoT SiteWise from Amazon Web Services, and the list goes on, in connecting this information to our asset definitions that we have into our scan. So Philippe, is that something that you can visually share right now? So we can have a bit of a visual on these reality assets.
Sure. Let me show you those reality assets.
Yes.
Yeah. I think it's on the way.
Absolutely.
It's my screen now.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. Maybe you can explain exactly the process on how define these assets in a very simple manner.
Yeah, we do have two different tools to define assets at the moment, and there's more coming soon. But the most basic one is by leveraging boxes. So now you can define asset in the space pretty quickly. We do have a turntable at the bottom to help the users navigate around the objects. And you can define the asset with multiple boxes. So even if you have complex objects, you can always find a way to isolate that asset quite easily, as I'm doing now. So I will just do something pretty quickly like this. And then you can generate the asset and give it a name and adding more properties. And maybe, Michel, if you want to expand on the properties sides, that might tie back to the question.
Exactly. So once you've start to break down your environment to these logical assets, obviously there's a lot of information that you can attach to these assets. Some of it can be basically CAD, BIM metadata information that you want to have, but also it can be all the way to attaching health and safety procedures. It can be connecting to your asset inventory system and other system of records that you have in your facility. And really, it's creating a framework that allows you to connect whatever data that you want to use within your system. And maybe, Nick, that's a good segue for you to talk about, because I know you've been working a lot on documenting health and safety aspects of your business with our digital twin. And maybe you could talk a few words about that, how it's been to be defining these assets and connecting relevant information to it.
Yeah, absolutely. And the maintenance piece, but I was just sitting here brain turning a little bit man, wouldn't I love to be able to click on something and know how many of those things I have components for, but nonetheless, so for safety and from a manufacturer's perspective, today, we have people entering our facilities from retail and food service who are coming to work in the manufacturing space. And it wasn't us who were working on the technology who came up with the idea, but it was safety who said, can we use this? And what they're using it for now is to perform things like virtual job safety analysis, or JSAs, if you're savvy to industry, and do some off-the-job training, which is pretty effective. So, you know, they'll walk into a work cell and it looks like the actual space because it is a capture of the real assets. And they can attach things like a job safety analysis. They can attach little 20-second videos that show an operator engaging with machinery in a safe way. But it's all, and you alluded to this earlier, it's in the context of the workspace. And it's just easier to train new employees when you don't have you know, the loud environmental noise. You're not out on the floor for the first time and you have forklifts passing back and forth. The training just lands a little better. So yeah, being able to create these assets allows us to do some of that.
Excellent. Yeah, it's definitely great to hear that. Like, we always love to hear our customers tell us in how many ways they can see using our platform for different use cases, from engineering all the way to these type of documenting for health and safety and so on. And really, I think for the audience today, like, we're gonna, you know, come back to the slide deck and talk a bit more about some of the elements of engineering work, right? So we've done a lot of work in the past while to really help engineers with the challenge of dealing with 3D scanning data, right? And also in this notion of the single version of the truth, right? So if you have like a CAD model, right, and you want to make sure that, okay, it's up to date. How do you make sure it's up to date? Well, the obvious thing would be to go on site and go out and start measuring and taking pictures and taking a lot of time to just, you know, to make sure that you have your CAD up to date. Well, if you use 3D scanning data, which really is interesting, is that we are able to provide tools that allows you to, you know, compare your existing CAD model to the scan environment, and you can rapidly see, okay, well, you know, I see that, you know, this pillar in my building hasn't been modeled, and I need that as part of my CAD, you know, design, and really helping to make sure that your CAD environment is up to date, which is a clear first step if you're about to do any design and engineering work, that you're not starting off with the wrong CAD version of your environment. And that's one of the key advantages, of course, on taking scanning data and comparing with your CAD. We've talked about, of course, how we're able to segment these assets, which is definitely a great way of organizing and structuring the information into this CAD. Earlier, Philippe showed how we're able to take these CAD elements and do actually design layouts into our system. We also recently announced different direct integrations into CAD software. So, for example, we have plugins now for Revit, Inventor, AutoCAD, and SolidWorks, and there's more coming in the works. And one key element is that you know, feedback we've been getting from engineers that are using Revit, for example, is like, well, okay, yeah, I can load point cloud into Revit, but it's very heavy, it's cumbersome, it's even painful to some extent. And one thing that we've done is to make a seamless integration with our product and Revit, so you can actually have more control over, let's say, displaying the density of your point cloud or your meshes. But even more interesting is that once you take in these segmented assets from our solution, we're able to push dynamically the segmented assets into the Revit families. And so the feedback we've been getting from designers and engineers is that, oh my God, this is going to save me so much time. Because one, if you need to back model those assets because you need them for your engineering project, well, having those reference assets from a scanning perspective directly to your Revit families simplifies the process of doing the back modeling. But even more is that sometimes you have to back model assets that are not necessarily needed for your design project as much, but you need their context, you need a visual reference. Let's say you're changing a specific configuration of a machine, and you still need the equipment around it as a visual context. And so if you only have a point cloud, well, you need to model those assets just for referencing. And so leveraging these meshed assets that we generate out of our product into directly the Revit families is also a major time saver. And of course, once you've done your design in Revit, for example, well, how do you make sure that your, let's say, your new CAD design doesn't clash with your as-built environment? Well, we've built fast clash detection that within seconds and minutes instead of hours, you're able to validate quickly, well, is this new design is clashing with some of the equipment, the piping that I have, and other stuff that is into your environment. And ultimately, we have this very easy to use sharing and collaboration platform that you can share these designs on the web, and anybody that has a computer with a decent graphic card, nothing crazy, can access this, visualize, comment, and share, and really accelerate the whole design engineering process. And that's really all the kind of work that we're providing with our tools. Maybe Nick, you can also comment on some of the usage you've done on some of these designs, like planning, moving equipment around, and how you were able to accelerate your design process because of our tools here.
Yeah, so I wasn't familiar with back modeling as a thing until it really happened. So we have these foundries have been around for a very long time, right? Very old company. So we have some very large machinery that's a little bit homebrew, but built in 60s, 70s. So we can take our terrestrial scanners, or what we use, but we can go in and scan them and export them into whatever CAD flavor the engineer's using, which even if you don't get it perfect, the 70% that you do get of a capture from something like that, because sometimes you just can't get the geometry, is wildly powerful. But two things that were real examples. So this is the real life things. We had a European facility that was just being built, and we were scanning a facility that was right next to it. And so we scanned the empty facility, and we brought on a team from that business unit, and we said, you can virtually commission everything that you want to put in here and mock it all up, but let's put the 2D PDF on the ground first. And we took assets from the building that existed, copy and pasted them into the new facility, and put in a bunch of the CAD models for their existing things. We brought in some preview, you guys didn't even touch on this yet, but preview supports animated models and building your own animations. So we built forklifts that drove around, kind of followed their paths, and kind of simulated what the work environment was going to be like. And, the things that we can do and how fast that brings you through even just stakeholder adoption is really, really powerful. So, it's just very interesting, the amount of fringe benefit that we have found.
Yeah, and from what I know is this has been a lot of time saving, like little things that otherwise are still technically possible, but takes a lot more time to achieve versus how you're able to contextualize some of these projects into our platform, right?
Well, the example, we call it the 6-foot example, but we scanned a facility, went to move the exact same machinery in another plant, and we didn't scan that plant before we went to put in that specific piece of equipment. And when we brought the equipment in, the building was 6 feet shorter on the west side than what the drawing said. So then we had to go and move CNCs and other heavy equipment, which if you've never moved those all require calibration and, concrete work. And it's just 6 feet. Now, if we had it scanned, we could have mocked that up and, put that a plan together to kind of save the time. So yeah, you're right. I agree.
Well, ultimately, it's all about efficiency, time saving, and getting to the results. And nobody can really afford errors and omissions and costly mistakes. And so the faster you can, come up to an understanding of what needs to be done from your engineering perspective, or how to, better document your site, it makes a huge difference on every side of the business. Great. So maybe we can go back to the presentation slide. I have one last slide before we can,
just quickly, like you can see, this is within 2 minutes, maybe less than that. I did like just a small animations where I just imported like a forklift in here. I create like a small animations by placing waypoints like this, and I can just hit play, and now you can see that the forklift start moving around. So yeah, it's pretty easy to do those type of features.
Absolutely. And so let's go back to the slide deck. And so really, one of the key message is that we are, enabling this layer of reality capture across multiple use cases, right? So for example, of course, taking 3D scanning data and going to your engineering process. We didn't talk too much about simulation, but that's definitely another area where people are using 3D scan environment to redesign spaces and use simulations like with Omniverse. And of course, we talked about documenting health and safety, documentation and other things. And also per the question that Howard asked earlier, like how to enable also connecting live data or operational data into this digital twin representation. And so these are examples of things that you can do with our solution. And of course, there's other use cases, and definitely we're more than happy to talk after this session about your own specific needs. I know that we wanted to give people some time for Q&A, so don't be shy to put questions into the Q&A window. Because we want to hear from you, all the wonderful attendees for today about what we're doing. As we're waiting for some of these questions, Nick, maybe you could talk about some of the journey that you went through in becoming one of our customers, and maybe that would be a good explanation for other companies maybe on this call to understand like how we're able to work with you and through the pilot project and so on to really build the support from your organization to go where we are today.
Sure. By timing for a sip of coffee, but I need one. So I would say one of the most digital twins on one of you got a couple kind of forward technologies that we're exploring at the same time. And what we have found is innovation is a fun word to talk about as a business, but innovation is a expensive word when it comes to business. And there is the real piece of saying that your innovation efforts on things like digital twin or spatial computing in general, they need to be in synchronous with your business, and they need to be a part of your strategy. If they aren't, that's okay, but they should be. That all kind of has to marry together. So when we spoke to Preview, we said we will have an amount of money that we want to spend and some capabilities that are on our target. And so how do we do those things? And, luckily we got coached into performing some of the scanning ourselves, which has been magical for scaling the technology as well as we have. At $185,000 for a 250,000 square foot facility, that gets expensive. But because we purchased our own equipment, we incur the travel costs and a little bit of time. So, we've got a good amount of hand-holding on the scanning side. Now, we took all of the editing and internalized that and kind of built up that capability. The good part is that it teaches you how it works. So we partner with Preview, we partner with our engineering teams, and really just try to expose the business as much as possible. But the nice part is that it's not, Preview is very flexible for us, and we can use it for safety. We can turn around and use it to virtually commission an entire building from scratch, or we can use it to focus in and do one product line. And, we use it to remove the concrete, check out the volume, build the volumetric for how much concrete we might need to bring in, import a CAD model, bring in a human model, kind of explain the space. So really it's the flexibility. It matches what our business needs without giving us the, typically when we're talking about a single point of truth, we're talking about things at scale like ERPs or MES platforms that are very large and have way more integration than I think most businesses can probably chew at one time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really great feedback. Anybody in the audience have questions for us, Prevu3D, but also for Nick as a prime customer of our solution?
I'll tell you what, I'll come back on here. Let's open this up. So our presenters do want to answer some questions from the audience. If you have them, please put them in here. Just type your questions in the Q&A widget on the right side of the webcast console. We'll get to as many questions as time allows. Anything that we don't get to today will be posted online at www.controleng.com. That's controleng.com. Also, remember to download a certificate of completion and a copy of the presentation. Use that additional resources tab, excuse me, on the right side of your screen. Gentlemen, I want to jump in with a question here, though. How does 3D scanning play a crucial role as an initial step in the software workflow for Prevu3D?
Well, it's a fundamental aspect, right? It's the raw material that makes the visual compelling environment that we have, right? So that what makes us unique, right? Because we start with reality, and then you go from there to making sure that your engineering data is up to date. And if you talk about like a facility and you want to talk about a certain area of your space, having a scanned version of the environment is, you understand, you see, if you've been there, you recognize it. If I show you the same space as a CAD model, you might not be as comfortable looking at it. So if you want to democratize the use of a digital environment, using a reality capture makes a massive difference in how you can get adoption and in some degrees, like even some excitement, because you say, hey, it looks like the space, and you can then navigate in it and you can do so many things with it. And it's really something that changes your understanding of what you should expect from a digital twin.
Yeah, I will say focus on quality. If the higher quality your scan data is, the more accurate your twins will be, and the more likely engineering is to use it if it's accurate. So I would say from a manufacturing use perspective, focus on quality.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Like for visual tour, I think like you don't necessarily need like the highest quality level, but when it comes to engineering, they typically request more quality. And if you want to like spread within multiple departments your twin, I think having like a higher quality help a lot on that side.
Yeah. So we're getting a lot of questions, which is great. So Dietrich, for example, asking about the compare tool that we have and how much do we use this if you've done your scan to BIM or scan to CAD conversion. Actually, it's an integral part of doing a scan to CAD, unless, of course, if you have no CAD at all and you just want to start from scratch, that not as useful. But often you do have a CAD model somewhere that you've done in the past, and how to validate if whatever CAD version you have is close enough. Again, if you have a CAD version that you've done last year and you can start from that and start starting from scratch on doing the entire scan to BIM work, you're going to save a lot of time. If you can identify the few areas that have changed since the last time you've done your CAD model, that will cut down a lot of hours, a lot of time. And I know that Vlad also had a question about the fact that there's only 24 hours in a day, and the key here is like our product is really designed to make things simpler, faster, and more efficient. Like learning how to use our product is extremely fast. Typically in a few hours you know how to use it. It's very simple, it's intuitive. Even more if you've played games before, it becomes a very natural experience for you. And it's all about making sure that we simplify and make things easier for you and your engineers, not more complicated.
I'll jump in with another question here. What are your pain points when dealing with your 3D scanning data?
Size. No, really, that's the feedback. It's the size of the twin data. The twin data is big, and so far on the scanning side, we DIY on the scanning data. It's hard to manage it up front. As soon as we get it uploaded, though, it's hands off, which is nice for us because then we don't have infrastructural costs, which add on top of managing the point clouds.
Yeah. So a few more questions here. So one, we've talked a bit about asset-based technology. Of course, it's a limited time session, but when we showed you how we were able to break down parts of the scan into logical assets, and you can attach data or metadata to those assets, it's really part of that when we talk about asset-based technologies, really turning a large scan environment into logical components of your space. And that really changes the how and what you can do, is really enabling that notion of assets. And again, this example of taking a defined asset that we have in our system and importing that right into your Revit families, for example, if you're using Revit, is a clear example of how to simplify the use of reality capture through this asset-based concept. Another question from Ernest here on what would be the starting point for someone to better understand the system. Well, I mean, it's simple. Like we have done, and we do a lot of like POCs, proof of concept or pilot project. And so of course we can have like pre-existing data that we can share in a demo account. Often we see success where customers do a small sample. Let's say they'll take in one machine room and just do a quick scan of that area. So the cost is very low. And then you're able to show your management, for example, here's how the reality capture and 3D scanning data can help you to be more efficient into your engineering workflows all the way to an operational digital twin.
And if I may jump in here, if you don't have any scans or you're not familiar with the scanning world, like we do have partners across the globe that can help on that side. If it's to help you get started for like a proof of concept project, we can support you for sure. Some of our customers decides to always subcontract the scanning part. Some others, like Nick, purchase their own scanners. So it's really up to you at that point. But for getting started, we can help for sure on that side.
Mm-hmm.
You guys touched on this during the presentation, but I just want to make sure. I think it's a good question, so I want to hit on it again. Can you combine the digital twin with the mathematical description of the object shown? If so, can you present not only the machines, but any performance information one might want to access, particularly if troubleshooting?
Yeah, exactly. So that's something that's coming very soon to our product, is connecting operational data. So Vivify or ERP data that you have, and how to make this contextualized based on the digital twin that you have in our system. And that's definitely an area that we see a lot of demand for, is to, like, if you have the data somewhere, but how do you contextualize the information in your space is extremely important. And that's something that's part of our roadmap coming soon.
Perfect. Where do you lose the most time when working with point cloud data?
I think Nick had a good part of the answer first. Like the size and the heaviness of a point cloud takes a long time to, just loading this, like if you have 100 gig or 500 gig point cloud file, extremely heavy, painful, and it's hard to move around. And so with the type of 3D meshes that we generate, we simplify the data heaviness. So if you had a 500 gig point cloud, we are able to optimize this into a 50 gig mesh environment. So a lot lighter, a lot easier to manipulate, and it's a lot more visual compared to just seeing points in space as a point cloud environment. I see here a question from Dietrich, which is interesting about this whole notion of a paradigm shift, since a lot of people are still using 2D schematics, which of course is something that we're looking to integrate, PI&IDs directly integrate into our environment. And I think that Nick could be a good testament to this, where, Amsted Rail is this like, company that's been out there for a long time, and are seeing how this new kind of digital technology is helping them move to the next, stage of their business, right?
I'm happy that you said it, because I was literally sitting here like, I want to answer Dietrich's question here. So
yes,
we are traditional manufacturing, and in foundry operations, we can't put in the level of, they're very advanced, don't get me wrong, vision systems, plenty of network and PLCs all over the place. But it is liquid steel. So, the environment's a bit harsh. When we talk about trying to take the, because really what we're talking about is gamifying the workplace. And you are 100% correct. MES systems are in place today, and it is still difficult to get everyone to make data decisions. So it is a hard thing to do, but here's what I think I know. I think I know that the gamification of work is real. And if it wasn't, then Farmville would have never been successful because it just convinced us all to work for free, right? I think the gamification is real, and I think that we will see it. And I think there are the precursors to give us the green flags that it's coming. MES offers digital twins, but they're process twins, and they're in 2D. And so we can put some context in there, but you're still looking at a flat shape. You can't see the rag in the trash can or the person's cup sitting on the table, but with reality capture, we can, and it's a whole different understanding. So that goes back to we provide information and context. And to be able to see things move in 3D, our brains understand things in 3D. They don't understand things in 2D as well as they do in 3D. If you've never read a blueprint, go pick one up and try to tell me exactly what it looks like, and then show someone something in 3D, and they will understand 100% the 3D model the first time. So there are green flags, and us trying to consolidate information into data platforms. We had the big data movement. Our MES systems and our ERPs are all big repositories of data. We need somewhere to put it in the context that we can understand it. And, 3D is what we all understand. So it kind of just makes sense.
Another question that just came in here. Are there vendors providing scans outside of the capabilities of the human eye?
So they are solutions like, for example, ground penetrating scanning that exists, like that for specific purposes, like if you want to find piping underground, for example. Obviously, a lot of the within above the ground scanning, you still need some notion of a line of sight. So the scanner still needs to see something to some degree. It's fairly efficient to capture even tight corners. But yes, you need some degrees of line of sight for the type of scanning data that we showed you. For hidden things like underground piping, there is underground ground penetrating scanning that exists as well that can be used for specific use cases.
I got a few digital twin questions here. Is your company already looking at digital twin for maintenance and operations?
That's exactly that. Like we're now, you've seen some of the visuals that we're creating. And so naturally, when we've been talking to companies and serving them on the engineering workflows, they're like, well, this looks amazing. I could see our maintenance and operations department using this as well. And so we've been into this journey for the past year or so to really open up our system to be more than just engineering work, but also enabling connecting to these enterprise system of records, PLM, MES, ERPs, and so on, into our digital twin environment. And that's where we're going to see a big push on that next year. So if you have either engineering workflows or specific maintenance and operations opportunities that you'd like to see how we can help you and help your company, we're definitely available to help you on that. Like I said, we are very keen on doing quick POC pilot projects to really help you educate your company. Most likely some companies don't have yet the maturity stage on understanding what it means to have a digital twin. So having a small sample of one of your facilities as a functional digital twin and showing that and what's possible certainly helps the process of getting buy-in from key decision makers.
You kind of mentioned this, and you mentioned maturity. What is your level of maturity regarding using digital twin?
Are you asking me myself personally, or
Prevu3D? Yes,
for the customers,
you personally.
Well, we're very advanced. We're at the bleeding edge of this next generation of these digital twins, right? We've been creating these environments that are unique from a visual perspective in how we're structuring this notion of assets segmented from the scan and connecting those assets into operational data, for example, pushing these deeper integrations into the engineering workflows. And we're really definitely at the lead on these type of innovation. And really, again, it's all about making things easier, more efficient, more visual. This whole notion of visual context is going to become more and more a key topic, like Nick explained, is that a 3D environment is worth a million pictures compared to looking at a 2D drawing. And say some companies are still early into that journey, but it will become more and more a prevalent environment. If you look at the next generation of designers and engineers, they're used to play games, they're used to dealing with 3D environments. And so for them, this is extremely natural as an environment to deal with from an engineering perspective.
Surprisingly, sometimes, surprisingly,
yes.
Because you will hand it to people who you think would struggle through the adoption, and they are 100 miles an hour, you know, and it's the CAD engineers are the ones who just find it easy.
Yeah, absolutely.
What would your ideal
a few
workflow...
more minutes for... Yeah.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Go on. No, I was just saying, if you have a few more questions, we still have a few more minutes, but go on, Gary. On the...
Hey, I was going to ask, what would your be your ideal workflow when using 3D scanning data?
A few things, right? So one is doing high quality scans for both helping, you know, keep your CAD data up to date is definitely part of this. Like Nick explained, to accelerate your design process. Like if you want to redesign your layouts of a facility, quickly iterate on new design concepts, starting from 3D scanning data, accelerate that process. You can cut around objects like we've seen earlier. You can move things around, share this online with our web platform, and really have a lot more people involved into the design process without wasting time and minimizing errors that can happen if you're doing a very technical 2D drawing versus just, hey, here's a 3D space. I just reshaped it. I created 3 iterations. We have another of our customers that saves millions of dollars in one of their design projects because they were able, right inside the reviews with their stakeholders, like in minutes, the design engineer was able to create new iterations and say, hey, we just talked about this. Here's how it looks. And then have people say, yeah, this is exactly what we want, and find ways of minimizing, equipment purchase, minimizing, errors or process into the design iterations. Nick, you want to add anything to that?
No lie, I think we moved a 3-story piece of equipment, and I think Alex spent 3 or 4 days scanning it. And it was so big we couldn't even get on top of the silos that were on top of it. But we were able to just copy and paste it into another facility to see how it fit. And when you were talking about acquisition, capital asset acquisitions, and how fast you can prototype, whether or not it's even feasible to put something somewhere is usually a big feat of engineering with days of measuring and travel, right?
Absolutely.
I've got another one for you guys. What challenges do users commonly face when they're implementing digital twin solutions, and how does Prevu3D help address some of those challenges?
Great question. So I think that, this is something that, you want to go by steps, right? There's no way that you can go from have nothing and then go overnight and have this full, your entire facility scan and everything is digitized overnight. There's a process to get there. So again, typically we see customers wanting to do a proof of concept just to see how well that would work for their environment, and then even trying to connect some data to our environment and using this as a live example. And that helps educate people internally that might not be exposed to this type of technology before. And so instead of coming out, hey, well, we'll spend millions of dollars in doing this, you go let's start small project, and then going a bit bigger, maybe doing a whole facility, maybe a specific CapEx project that you have in mind that you want to accelerate your design layout capabilities, and really to the build up. And Prevu3D is really about that, is really being part of the journey together. We're here together with our customers to, every step of the way, making sure that we are supporting you and giving you an ability to leverage these new technologies in a way that makes sense for you. Not every company is the same, and we recognize that, and that's why we see this very pragmatic, step-by-step approach as a very successful path. Yeah,
and listen, Phil and Michel are definitely my people. I love them; they do fantastic work. But just a little nod to Prevu there. It really is about the engagement with Prevu too. It's constant contact. When we run into a use case that we can't do, we sit down and have a conversation, and they've really done a good job at hand-holding. manufacturing, we're always going to have a little bit of a needy side when it comes to some of those things. And honestly, that part's been super beneficial.
Yeah. Thank you.
I think, Nick, you've been great sharing some of the ways that Prevu3D has helped you at Amsted Rail. Can you guys discuss any other success stories or case studies where Prevu3D has significantly improved efficiency or productivity for your users?
Yeah, we have a bunch of examples on our website. And again, if you want to have more information, we have a great team of account executives and a customer success team that basically can help you understand some of the work we've done with other companies. We have customers in both, the manufacturing as a whole, food production companies, oil and gas, and so on. So we definitely have a great, set of examples that we've been successful in helping companies improve their design process, improve how they can share and collaborate, improving their engineering workflows. And so, yeah, definitely always more than happy to spend time after this call. We can't name all the companies publicly because some of them, they're very quiet or private about their stuff. But we have some of the biggest brands in all these industries as customers, and more than happy to share more offline out of this webinar.
Perfect. Probably time for 2 more questions here if we can get them in. Can you elaborate on the types of users who benefit most from leveraging Prevu3D meshed environments across their engineering workflows?
Well, first, the engineering department, because he helps in so many ways your engineering workflows. I would say that a lot of the decision makers, the ones that are not actually on front of your CAD software, right? How to help them better understand, again, back to this visual notion, this visual context. If you have key decision makers that are often not on the same side, they're remote, like how can you help someone that's remote understand the changes you're planning to do in a facility, is really another great example of how we can help. Actually, one thing that reminds me, in 2 weeks, we're going to have another great event. We're doing actually our first user event in Montreal, but we'll have a virtual streaming support as well. And we can have many great panels from both 3D scanning providers to different engineering companies, and even like partners like NVIDIA will be there to talk about simulation, for example, and other things, and kinetic vision as well, which does a lot of great work in the manufacturing space. And so again, we're all about the education part, helping our customers understand how we can help. So if you want to find out more about this event, we have this event called Connections 2024. If you go to our LinkedIn page, we have a lot of information there. And I think we'll share the links as well. And of course, we'll have people doing a follow-up after this show. If you want to have more active discussions, definitely more than happy to help on that.
I'm going to try to sneak one more in here, but this will have to be relatively brief since we have about 2 minutes left. Looking toward the future, what developments or advancements can we expect from Prevu3D to further enhance capabilities and impact across industries?
Well, we didn't talk too much about artificial intelligence, but there's clearly, if any of you have started to play around with ChatGPT and having this prompt where you can ask questions, well, I think where things are going is really about, okay, I have data and I have this visual digital twin courtesy of Prevu3D. What if you could start asking questions and have visual representations on the information you're looking for? Like, show me where people are walking around into the facility if you have like a tracking of your resources, or you want to see where specific health incidents have occurred and other things like that. How to contextualize information in time and space using ChatGPT like prompts and data visual representation onto a digital twin is really where you're going to see the next frontier of these smarter digital twin solutions.
Perfect. Thank you everyone in the audience for all the great questions, terrific Q&A, and a big thanks again to our presenters for sharing your time and expertise. Thanks guys for being here. Really enjoyed talking to all of you.
Great. Thank you.
I'd also like to extend a special thanks to the sponsor of today's event, Prevu3D, for sponsoring. Any questions we didn't get to today, we will post them online at www.controleng.com with a link to the on-demand event. Now that we are just about done, we do want to hear how we did. An exit survey is going to pop up on your screen as soon as this webcast ends. Please take a moment to complete it because we use this information to help improve our future webcasts. Finally, on behalf of Control Engineering, I'd like to thank you for attending. This is the end of the webcast. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.